Greetings everyone, Baldus here. Over the last few days I have been doing quite a bit of testing regarding 1 to 50 leveling for Druid, and have ended up with a strong and consistent build that will get you to T3 easily no matter what legendaries you drop on the way. The build only utilizes a single legendary aspect which can be obtained from a dungeon early on in the game. I was able to complete the capstone dungeon comfortably at level 45 with just this and some rare gear. Of course you can imprint more of your gear with aspects, but I wanted to showcase how this build performs with the bare minimum setup. I also used less skill points to simulate a character that hasn't completed all of the renown. So whether you are starting your first character or skipping the campaign, there is no difference. Obviously, if you are boosting an alt, the initial leveling part does not matter, but the build still remains very strong past level 50 into T3 content and beyond. For Druid, I would recommend starting off in World Tier 1 and move up to Tier 2 after acquiring the aspect and certain skills from the tree. So basically, we're going to be running Lightning Storm as our core skill the whole way, with Storm Strike as our generator. The main reason for this is that they both deal lightning damage, which synergizes with our singular legendary Overcharged. With a lucky hit, we have a 10 to 20% chance when dealing lightning damage to overload the target, causing any direct damage to pulse additional damage to surrounding enemies. This also hits the afflicted target, providing a lot of single target damage as well. When you're around level 15, whether you are going through the campaign or skipping it, make your way to Skosglen. It's the area north of the capital where you start. We also need to head here to complete our Druid specific quest to unlock Spirit Boons, so it works out quite nicely. We need to then complete the dungeon Mariner's Refuge to unlock this overcharge aspect. Once you have the aspect and the required materials, imprint it onto a necklace for a 50% increase, bringing up the chance to 15%. The reason why we put it on a necklace is because we rarely need to upgrade this slot, as it offers very little power early on. Doing this helps to save materials for our future imprints. Now once you have this aspect unlocked, imprint it when possible, and then it's clear sailing from here. All you need to do is unlock Spirit Boons while questing, clearing dungeons, or working through the campaign. Now I will go over the skill tree in depth, starting from level 1 to provide a bit of guidance of when to get certain passives and skills as you go. To begin, we'll take Storm Strike, as well as the first node Enhanced Storm Strike to apply Immobilize. Now we can take 1 point into Lightning Storm, and then we move back up and take our final point into Storm Strike to apply the vulnerability. Now we need a further 2 points to unlock the next section. So we take 1 point into Enhanced Lightning Storm to preserve our channel time, and then an additional rank in Lightning Storm. Now what we want from this area is we want Bloodhowl, but the main reason is for the 20 spirit on use. So because we can only spend, we need to spend 3 points in order to gain this. We spend initially 2 points into the Lightning Storm, and then as you level up on the 3rd level, you take these out and then take 3 points into Bloodhowl. The reason why Bloodhowl is so good for leveling just in the early game is because it gains a cooldown every time we kill an enemy, and then it's also giving us that 20 spirit when used, So the more enemies we kill, the more it's off cooldown, so we can just keep our spirit generation up quite nicely. So for the next section, we need another 2 points. So we take the next passive in Lightning Storm, which gives us 1 additional Lightning Strike, and then a further rank into Lightning Storm. Now what we do here is we'll take Poison Creeper initially for leveling, as it's very strong in the early stages, provides quite a lot of damage, and it just seems to, at this stage of the game, it seems to be very strong. So we need a further 4 points. So now we go up here and we take 3 points into crit chance against close enemies. The reason why this is good is because with our generator, we're always going to be in melee range. So when we use a Lightning Storm, it's likely going to be hitting close enemies, giving us that increased crit chance. We still need an additional point, so we just take 1 more into Lightning Storm. So now in our Wrath section, we want to take Hurricane first, including the slow and then the vulnerable. Vulnerable as a buff is just very nice across the board, as it makes enemies take 20% increased damage when applied. So after this, we also want to take Trample, which is a very nice skill for leveling, especially when we start taking this passive here that deals more damage. Just a nice bit of burst damage for single enemies or a group of enemies. And then we also want to take the Spirit when we cast Trample. Just helps keep up that spirit generation for the leveling period where spirit isn't that manageable. So we still need 1 point in order to unlock our ultimate section. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our final rank into Lightning Storm here. And then we're going to take 1 point into Elemental Exposure. Just gives us a more chance to have Vulnerable up. And then we want to take our Poison Creeper out at this stage and take our ultimate, which will be Cataclysm. At this point we already have 6 skills on the bar, so we can't have Poison Creeper as well, and it just falls off after a certain point in time. So from this we want to take both passives into the Cataclysm, which give a bit more duration and also vulnerable when it strikes. Now we need 7 points to unlock our Keystone passive. So we're going to be spending the majority of these points up here on these passives here. So we want to take 1 point initially into Endless Tempest, another point into Bad Omen, and then a point into Electric Shock. So these all just apply bonus lightning damage, chance and triggers for against immobilized or vulnerable enemies for this one. And then additionally this does more lightning damage against immobilized enemies. And also has a chance to immobilize them. There's quite a bit of lucky hit involved in this build, so my tip would be when you're searching for rare gear, or just, well, not searching, but whatever you get dropped, just have a look if it has crit chance or lucky hit on it, and that's the kind of the gear that you want to go for with this build. But it's not a big deal, especially when leveling. So we need a further 4 points, so we just keep on putting more ranks into these. We want to prioritize Endless Tempest to keep our Hurricane and Cataclysm duration longer. And then we can put a couple of points into these just for more damage. Now, for our Keystone passive when leveling, we want to take Perfect Storm. The reason for this is mainly for that spirit generation, as Storm skills, when we cast, they gain 1 spirit, but they also gain spirit whenever they're damaging enemies. So when we're using something like Hurricane and we're going into packs of mobs, it's ticking continuously against all of them, so it keeps our spirit quite nice and high, just so we can maintain our lightning storm channel. Very good against bosses as well. So now that we have perfect storming, we can get rid of our Bloodhowl. So, and as a defensive, more defensive option, we pick up Earthen Bulwark, including the Unstoppable and the Fortify. This just helps to bring a bit more survivability to the build while we're leveling, and the Unstoppable helps to break out of stuns and also avoid CC while it's up. So you remove the Bloodhowl and then you slot in your Earthen Bulwark instead. So now, just to finish off this section, you just, after this point, you'll be very healthy. The build will feel very good once you get your Keystone passive, because you'll be getting much more spirit generation. So we just want to fill in our passives here. Just fill them up all 3 out of 3. We don't need this one as it doesn't offer us any additional bonuses other than just more damage, which isn't essential. So now, after this point, we move back up and we start taking a bit more. We just really want to maximize our spirit generation now. So we're going to take more generation with our basic skills, and then we'll take wild impulses to offer us more damage at the expense of spirit cost. The trade-off is very good, and at this point our spirit generation is nice and management is good, so spirit really doesn't feel like an issue, which is quite contrasting to many of the builds in Druid, especially before level 50, or even after level 50. Many of the builds do suffer from spirit generation, but not this one. This one has a very nice manageable spirit, which really smoothens out the gameplay and makes it more consistent. So at this point, once we've got those points in, we can move down here, and for survivability, I like to pick up 1 point in here, and then 3 points into Circle of Life. This is great, especially for Lightning Storm, as every tick of the channel, it procs this 3% maximum life. So it just helps as we progress further into the game. We're just generating our health back quite nicely. Now, I've just got 1 more point to spend. If I'm using the example from someone that hasn't completed all the renown, I would only have about 5 points remaining. But if you have more, you would go into Ancestral Fortitude and then take 3 points into here for a bit more damage reduction when you use a defensive skill. And then after this point, you would just take some more damage in against elites, as you'll be starting to do more dungeons. It's just a bit more bonus damage. After this point, there isn't that much crazy stuff in the skill tree. We can take some more Fortify from all sources just to gain that quicker, or gain some Fortify while being struck. Or we could move up here and also take here Nature's Reach, just for more damage against distant enemies. And because they're immobilized, quite often it's a reasonable damage upgrade. But because we're using Storm Strike, we tend to be close in range, and we benefit more from the close passives initially. That's everything with the skill tree. I'll just go over the spirit boons quickly. So we're just going to take the maximum spirit for leveling. These ones don't really offer us much, especially for leveling. I mean, you could take the damage from elites, but wariness is really only a benefit when you start getting to higher levels and pushing nightmare dungeons and some stuff. So maximum spirit can just help, you know, before a boss fight or mob pack. You can just get your full bar up so you can do more strikes in a row. But after this, for the eagle row, you want to take the crit chance, and then also the attack speed I like to take, because with lightning storm, even though it is a channeled skill against bosses, there is a trick where you channel it up to a certain amount of strikes, say like 2 or 3 strikes, and because it doesn't spread out as much, all those strikes actually hit a boss. So, and at that point you can then spam click it and it won't expand the strikes out in any more range. So you're actually getting more damage, more concentrated damage with your lightning storm. And that's where the attack speed comes into. And also, you know, because we're still generating spirit with our auto attacks, it helps with storm strike as well. So for the wolf, this is quite an important spirit boon, something I would try and acquire early on, which is energize. So on a lucky hit, dealing damage has up to a 15% chance to restore 10 spirit. With this build, we're hitting quite often, especially with Hurricane, Cataclysm, all the lightning procs, lightning storm procs, overcharge procs. You know, we're dealing lots of sources of damage, a lot of multiple hits and stuff. So this has quite a high chance to proc, which just helps to increase our spirit generation and management while leveling. And then finally, for the viper or the snake, we're going to take overload. This, when we deal lightning damage, we have a 20% chance to cause the target to emit a static discharge, dealing a certain amount of damage to surrounding enemies. This serves very similar to the legendary aspect I talked about earlier, so it's just another bonus damage bonus for the build. I mean, you could take Calm Before the Storm if you want to get your Cataclysm off cooldown quicker, but for leveling, it's not that important. You usually only use Cataclysm for bosses and things, just to get that spike of damage. But that's it with the spirit boons and the skill tree. There isn't much else to talk about because gear is something you don't go in great depth for leveling, because you're always swapping out different gear pieces and things. But what I would say is just try and look for a bit of crit chance is nice, and some lucky hit chance, because we are taking quite a few things that have lucky hit modifiers. So it will just help increase that smoothness of the gameplay to proc all these lucky hits. And one more thing I forgot to mention, Cataclysm has a very high chance to lucky hit, and this is why it's important in the build, as it can just proc all these benefits when it's used. So especially good against bosses, like I said before. So yeah, that's pretty much it with the leveling build. I found after doing the testing, this felt so good compared to all the others I've done, and like I mentioned, we only need a single aspect which we can get from a dungeon. We don't need to rely on any legendary drops in order to become powerful and just enjoy the game as a druid. Because I know a lot of people complain about how sluggish and it feels during the leveling process. But with this build and setup, it feels very nice, and it's acquirable by everyone. This also may be very useful in when the seasons come. As long as stuff doesn't change or too many things change, this would be the thing I would run for sure. It's gonna be a fresh start, so there'd be no boosting of characters or anything, so you'd have to level yourself. You won't have to complete the campaign or do Lilith statues or anything, but you'll still have to do renown and side quests, dungeons, leveling, just the standard stuff. So this build should be very good for then. And I will update it if there's changes. But I would say this will be the best for season leveling on a druid. final comments, I would say after level 50 or after you've completed the capstone dungeon, you can transition this very well into T3 content. It runs very smoothly. You can acquire more aspects from the dungeons and also legendary drops that you get, and just add them to the build as you see fit. But yeah, that's pretty much everything, guys. Thank you for watching. I hope you found it very useful. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe, and also drop a comment in the comment section. And also don't forget to check me out on Twitch at Baldus Maximus. I'm going to be starting to stream 6 days a week consistently now, so there's that to look forward to. I'll be bringing more Diablo 4 content. Thanks again, everyone, and I'll see you in the next one.